Alrighty, let me share my screen here. Not sure which screen's going to show it. We'll try that one. Come on. Okay, guys, what I've noticed is that if I actually put this into run mode, then it looks very funny, so I lose you guys. So this slide presentation I actually borrowed from the best place I have learned to learn about First Lego League. And I'm proud to say, actually, I donated one of the first $100 to this group. It is a team from maybe Pennsylvania. They have now graduated out of the program. At the time, their team name was Not the Droids You're Looking For. Mostly comprised of two brothers, Arvind and, nope, I forgot the other brother's name, but they're known as the Session Brothers. And many years ago, there was a first Lego League season, and the challenge was called World Class. And teams were challenged with, how can we make learning better? The Session Brothers decided, how can we make learning First Lego League better? And they created a website and tutorials. And that has grown years since to be one of the best places to learn how to not only learn about First Lego League, they have a site for First Lego League Junior. They're working on a site for First Tech Challenge. They have lessons for coaches, for students. They have team building lessons, core value lessons, project lessons, even presentation lessons. So rather than rewriting the book, I'll borrow from the kids who know how to do it even better than me. So this session is about, developing a good game strategy. And the most important thing is to read the challenge guide, the rules, and read them thoroughly. Not only you as a coach, but the students. Really, the students need to know this inside and out. In fact, a good thing to do with your kids is to ask them throughout meetings every week random questions that they can find the answer in the books. And hopefully that by the end of the season, they're ready to, before competition, they can pretty much read back to you all the important rules and mission items. Because when it comes to competition day, they will be the resource that needs to know what rules are allowed, how the missions work, how the missions are scored, and they will know more about the game than the referees who are refereeing the match. And that is whether it's in person or not, because referees are generally volunteers who maybe have a few hours of training, not months worth of prepping and preparing. So referees make mistakes, judges make mistakes, we all make mistakes. So what works best for you and your team to optimize the most out of your game is be prepared. So I have my team, every team member takes their own copy of the rules with them to the matches, and even to judging, so that if anything comes up, they can go, excuse me, Mr. Referee, Miss Referee, the rule says right here on page 3, section 4, that this mission scores in this manner. That way the ref can take a look at it and go, oh, you're right, and move on. It looks very impressive when the kids work that way. It saves a whole lot of possible arguing, bad attitudes. So really know the rules, because if you don't, and I have seen this happen with a team program their entire robot the whole season, go to competition, and they didn't read the rules right, and their mission didn't work the way it was programmed, or the way the rules were written. And that team cried and cried and cried, because they went through their entire tournament running that mission the way they did. They learned their mission by watching other teams practicing. What they didn't know is that the mission they were running was only part of another mission. So everything they had done and then bringing things back to base was only a portion of the mission, where then for that season, you then had to take everything to another corner of the board. So they ended up not scoring anything. And the referee at the last round spent time to explain to them why they didn't score anything. No other referee took that much time to explain to them. They finally realized, oh my goodness, we haven't scored anything. And they were just overcome. I went up and talked to them and had to cheer them back up and made them realize, look, great lesson. You need to know the rules, follow the rules. Big mistake here, lesson learned. But you guys still had success. You made that robot do exactly what you programmed it to do. That is a success. So go away proud of what you did and become better the next year. Well, that team became one of the best teams for like the next 4 years running. They won second place at the state championship and went on to the North American Open and won second place in the robot design there. So yeah, they learn their lessons. And so I'm teaching you now the lesson: know the rules, read the rules. The next important thing is, of course, the updates. First makes updates. I think the last one was in October. And any updates supersede the rule guide. So make sure that the team is constantly checking up on the rules and the updates and how to do all of that. So planning your robot game. And I'm actually, before we talk about planning the game, I want to talk about something that makes planning and robot design, pretty much everything you do, so much easier. And that is the core values. The first core values are really the cornerstone of the entire first program. They are key to everything we do. And if you build on the core values, everything else goes better. So if you want successful game strategy, you use core values at every meeting, teaching those kids to work together as a team, as a group of one, and to the point of where, when they're brainstorming ideas, everybody wants their idea used. And they have to learn that, hey, as a group, sometimes your idea may not be the one selected for the good of the group, but together we will grow and succeed. Versus arguing, my idea, no, my idea. And so a lot more can get accomplished if they learn to respect each other, work within the core values, work as a team with the same common goal. And they have to be reminded of that throughout the season, especially towards the end of the season where everybody's tired and frustrated and, comments will come back. It's like, I knew we should have gone with Billy's idea. This one's not working out. Like, hey, we're a team. We made this decision. We're going to push through with it. So if you practice core value routines all the time, make practice fun, then that makes everything else work more efficiently. And also really in first, especially in first Lego League, if you concentrate just on the robot game, you might get a trophy for the best robot performance, but you lose out on the opportunity for the top trophy, which is the Champions Award, which is the best overall teams, or any of the other awards. So really, I encourage you and the team to work on the project, work on the robot design and the robot build and the core values. Especially this season, judging, even before the pandemic happened, first was changing how judging is done. It is now done one judging session where the entire team and the judges go in and talk about the project, the core values, and their robot design. So it's more important now than ever that the team does a good job of documenting their project and their robot. And especially the robot, what the judges want to see is how well did you, not only how well they designed the robot, but what steps they went through to learn those lessons. There's an awful lot of examples of robots out on the internet. The judges are going to want to know, where did this design come from? Why did you use it? What changes did you make to it from what you downloaded? And do not just download a robot and use it as is. Your team needs to make it their own. They need to experiment with it. Otherwise, it's just a copycat robot. And the judges have seen all those copycat robots. So you need to make sure it's your own and has reasons for why it does what it does, because the judges will ask. Experiment with different size wheels and tires. The Session Brothers here in their presentation talk about planning out the whole robot game and strategizing where you go on the board and everything first and then build your robot. I've always done it the other way around, is where we do have a session and talk about the game board and analyze the missions to realize, okay, well, we don't want too tall of a robot because we need to go under the pull-up bar and other elements. And generally what we've always done is use last year's robot as a demo to practice on the board with and go, okay, how will this year's robot need to be different than last year's? So we have a working prototype already built to play with the board. And from that, we can then write down notes and decide what needs to be made for this year's robot. Such as last year's robot, my son's team only had drive motors. They consciously made a decision to do every mission passively, which means however you're going to articulate things like putting things up in the tree last year or manipulating objects was all done with either levers or bumping into things or moving things, but no motors at all were used to lift, pull, drag. It was all done with rubber bands and leverage. And it was a challenge that they added on to themselves. They were a more experienced team, and my son was aging out at the time. So it was his last hurrah, and he wanted to make it a little bit more difficult. But it was quite fun. With that being said, is even with what they did, the team had to analyze each mission and the value of each mission, because sometimes missions look like they're high points, but their complexity and their distance from base may not make them worth doing for the team. If you can do 3 missions close to home and your robot can easily navigate those 3 missions, they may be worth more points to do those 3 missions than try to build for driving the distance to that more complex mission that is higher points. So when the team decides how they want to do everything, they really have to take, it's more like a chess match, and they have to analyze their skills and abilities. So as a new team, I suggest you stick closer to home, because the further you travel away from the board, the more the robot generates error in its ability to drive straight. So it's fairly key to learn how to use the sensors. This year's board has an awful lot of lines printed on the mat, little black lines all over the place. Those lines are used for navigation. So you put a color sensor on your robot, you learn how to program it to find the line and follow the line, and that will help your team navigate to exactly where they need to be. Okay. Do you want to join this meeting, son, and help? Come on.
Oh, my hair is
All right, let me see it.
awful.
Well, let me see your note.
Oh, well, I could just say, for each mission, you really want to make sure you want to assign and figure out how much time it'll take to drive to the mission, how complex the mission is, how easy you can complete it, and what you think in its proximity to other missions. You have to just figure out which missions are the most important and the best for your team to complete, and not just go for every single mission on the board, and really focus in on the ones you think will be the best.
Put a cap on and join the meeting.
No.
All right. Also, you generally can't do too many missions without some sort of attachment on your robot. So it's good to program and try to design missions that can reuse the same attachment. And if your attachments do come off the robot, it's best to have a method to make the robots come off very easily. What we generally use is long axle pins or axles themselves. So because I don't have any Lego pieces in front of me, but a pin into a beam sticks in and stays really good, but an axle stuck into a beam moves freely. So if you can make a robot attachment just using axles or short axle pins that pin into the robot, and then it pulls out really easily. So when you're doing the mission, it'll stay attached to the robot. But when it gets back to base, it pulls out really easily. You know, our first few years, we didn't know those little tricks, and so we were unpinning items from the robot, and that takes time. So the more time you spend in base, the less time you're out scoring. So you want to be as efficient as possible in how you map out where you're going to go, what missions you're going to do with what attachments. Try to minimize the number of times you have to come back to base and change out attachments. And really, it's up to the team to kind of determine. In the beginning, the kids are all going to think, we can do everything. And as time goes on and you get closer to the tournament, more and more stress and reality comes into play. It's like, well, all right, team, we need to re-meet and decide we're not as far along in building these missions that we'd like. We need to decide how we're going to cut back, in what way. Almost every year, our team has assumed in the beginning we could do almost all the missions, and in the end, we could not. And it's actually more important that the missions you complete, that they work well. If you aim for too many missions and they sort of work, well, it's sort of like going to Vegas and rolling the dice in your competition. And competition adds that much more stress and Murphy's Law into the robot. So if your robot missions aren't programmed and practiced really well, whatever can fall apart will fall apart at the competition. Seen it way too many times over and over, even with the most practiced of teams. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. The first thing to do, though, is plan out your initial strategy, what you think the team's going to be able to accomplish. It helps if you actually have each kid kind of map out how they think they can attack the board. Like, we want to start the robot over in here and go here and then go here. And this will be mission 1 and this will be mission 2. So that way you're getting input from all the team. You may have members of the team that want nothing to do with the robot, nothing to do with programming. But essentially they all should have some input in every element. Maybe you have a chief programmer who helps mentor the other ones who aren't as thrilled with programming. And the ones who maybe aren't into programming so much, you give them the simplest of missions, or just training missions. You know, here, let's make this robot drive straight, turn left, and that kind of gets them off to close to the first mission you guys want to accomplish. Maybe you have somebody else program the moving the gripper and things like that. But that way, when you get to judging, and the judges ask, well, who did all this? It won't be just one kid who gets up and says, well, I did all the programming and Billy built the robot. And then the rest of the team kind of stands there, and judges don't think highly of that too well. We want everybody to take part, and it's really not about winning. Winning in this program is everybody participating, everybody having fun, and at the end of the competition, it'll be one of the biggest lessons you and they have ever had. That's a win. Because in truth, only a few teams get to move on and win all the awards and go on to the next championship. You know, hundreds of teams don't get all that, but hundreds of teams still won because they learned so much. So to be successful is number one, practice core values, work together as a team, realize that it's the journey is really the process of winning. So that by the time you get to your competition, you guys have the right attitude of, hey, we're in it for the fun. We practiced, we're ready. Whatever happens, we're going to have a great day. That makes for a good, happy, winning team. What helps for the judging room and for the team to keep track of things is create like a mission planning guide. Because each week, so many things are going to be happening. They should write down the missions they're working on. And FLL Tutorials has some guides you can download for Google Classroom or download directly and work on to help. Even just a notebook will work. But where you write out your missions and what you attempted, how easy or hard it was to do. You journal what you changed for that meeting. We tried the bigger wheels, the smaller wheels. Becca built a bigger robot arm versus the one that Jerry made. We're going to try that out this meeting. You know, keep track of those things, because in judging, you will also need that to say, well, we tried different things, because the judges want to know, what did you learn? What did you try? What did you experiment with? So if you can actually journal it all out, so that by the time you get to judging, you can have a nice, short, concise explanation to the judges. It's like, well, yeah, we experimented with this, and we tried multiple kinds of arms, and we learned that a lever with a motor on this end worked better than a rubber band on this end, you know, those kinds of things. Being able to concisely, much better than me, explain to the judges is very helpful in the judging room. It's also, if you can explain it well to the judges, generally the robot will work better too. My son just reminded me of, you could set up like a agile Kanban board as well. It helps to list out all the things that are in progress, need to be done, or done. And you can do that with stickies on a wall. And that way you make bite-sized pieces of what the team needs to work on. So if they're working on mission 2 and what elements for mission 2 they need to work on, you can create little stickies of what all needs to be done, and you can move that from the, you know, planning to in process to testing to complete stages on your wall. And it looks pretty cool at the end of the season when you have all the stickies moved over to done. If only it was all the stickies. Any questions so far? Am I going too fast, too slow? Am I losing you?
Kevin, I just had one question, Anupama here. If you go back to the previous slide, and
Sure.
when it says hard and easy to activate, can you give me just some hints or clues? What does the activate mean here?
Let me turn off this other speaker. I can't hear you so well.
Oh, okay. Can you hear better now?
Next question.
Yeah. So I was just trying to get some more understanding of hard and easy to activate. You know, how do you, what is that category of the mission strategy?
Oh.
Yeah, that's the slide 6.
Okay. Well, that's really up for the team to decide if hard and easy to navigate, but generally that would be if, you know, if the team assumes that it's a long distance and there's objects in the way, it's not a straight path,
No,
it may be harder to navigate.
okay. I'm talking about the point right before it, activate.
Before the robot activates?
Hard and easy to activate. So how is it just before?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be I mean, I'm making a guess because I didn't create this thing, but
Yes, no worries. Yeah.
I think that's the mission itself. How hard or easy is it to activate? Such as
Okay.
this year, don't know the name of it, but in the far corner, you have the weight that you have to lift up in the air. Um, and if you move that arm further back, it becomes heavier for the robot to lift up um, and to stay up. So that's activating it, such as the back of the bench is fairly easy to activate because really if you just drive up to it and pretty much could just knock it off by driving into it.
Mhm.
So I think that's how hard or easy it is to navigate, to activate would be. And you guys can make your own little chart of what you think. It's just what works well with your kids to have them analyze the missions. It helped one year for Trash Trek that there actually was math to the formula so that some items actually were better left not touched. There were entire building frames so that there were certain black pieces that if you knock them down, they are actually negative points because they couldn't be recycled. So teams had to do the math to correctly determine, is it better to knock down this? Because if I do, I have to do something with the non-recyclable black components. So it made kids do more math and realize this looks initially like a great big point mission, but there's a huge subtraction because of these black pieces. So the same sort of thing though happens in every season though, is that there's elements to deciding. The most missions are multifunction. So, you can flip over the big tire, and you can actually take one of the people from the slide, knock them off the slide. If you can take them back to base or pick them up and put them on the tire, that's an additional 10 points. Some of those little extra points are put in there on purpose by the game designer for the teams that are so good that they can do the nth degree. They're actually kind of designed to waste the time of some of those more complex teams. Because really, rarely can a team do every single mission. So don't worry about some of the little 10 pointers where if you took the man and put him on top of the tire versus bringing him to base, or if you put 4 of the little pieces up on the edge of the hanging of the pull-up bar, that's extra points. Work with the core of the points that your team can do. This really is all around what your team is capable of doing, and that capability changes as the season goes on if they get better. Because they could run into be at a wall at one point, and then suddenly say the programmer gets really good, and the programming team goes, hey, we can now make the robot follow lines and turn along lines and do this better. That just opened up a whole new world for us. So now we can take on that further away mission. But don't push beyond what you're capable of, but really without sensors, this year's board can get you really lost really quick. So it's kind of key for winning strategy is learn how to use that color sensor.
Right.
Where to mount it. There's lots of tutorials on the internet. There's plenty on FLL tutorials as well. The light sensor is key because it really keeps you from getting lost on the board. Because you lose points if your robot goes out there and then can't turn around and come back home and you have to rescue it. You start losing points. So it'd be better to do less missions successfully than more missions and get the robot stranded.
Yes.
And on FLL tutorials, they do have all kinds of little tools to help you. They have a strategy planner where you can color and draw lines for each mission so the team can get together and use that and draw out how they think the robot should go, start here, go down the road, you know. It's kind of a cool little tool. They also have a online score. So as the team's practicing or they want to know how many points each things can get, they can use the online score to calculate how many points they get. So as they say here is like, once you have your strategy, then build your robot. So whichever comes first for you guys, chicken or egg, it starts getting into the complexities of things. Once you start to, you know, you can build a robot pretty easy. You can put together the map pretty easy. It's now making missions work on the map. It gets a little tougher because programming can be frustrating. This is a plastic robot, not an industrial robot. So there's inaccuracies in the motors and things like that. And so you kind of have to program around them. Some of the things we try to do is square the robot against walls. And if you ever look at videos on YouTube, you will see robots backing into walls. It's like, why are they doing that? Because once you back into a wall, your robot's now squared up against that wall. And you also now know how far away from that wall your next target would be. So wall squaring is a strategy used. Also, you can use the mission elements themselves to triangulate into. Oftentimes we have a V-shaped front end on our robot to where we can drive into a mission and the robot will center itself so that by the time it has to release a lever, it will be in the right place. So that helps as well. The faster you can get to where you're going, articulate the mission, and then get home safely, the better. But when line following going too fast will make it harder. So line following is generally a slower process than just driving without any sensors. But it is a more accurate process. So your team can experiment with how fast to go. I think we were usually going around 30 power, something like that. Each robot's different though. But just realize if you're going too fast, the light sensor may not have the ability to see where it's going. If the light sensor is too far off the map, it may also have a hard time seeing the lines. And if the room is too dark or too bright, that can also cause issues as well. The easiest way to start programming would be to pseudocode, which is more or less talking about what exactly you want the code to do in more simple English before they actually get into coding it. So robot is going to go forward 12 rotations, turn left 90 degrees, go forward 300 centimeters, lift beam motor 80 degrees, open attachment, you know, things like that. So if you write it out in pseudocode, then the programmers can have a kind of an idea of what they need to follow. And definitely your strategy will change over time. A lot of times working on a mission, kids will brainstorm for a whole nother mission and go, hey, we could try what's not working so great on this mission over on that mission. And sometimes it's great, it's awesome. Sometimes it's not. Either way, it's a win and lessons learned. Definitely rookie teams are the missions closer to base are generally designed to be a little bit simpler for rookie teams to be able to accomplish. And there should be at least one mission that has been described and even given you programming samples within the EV3 lessons and the guides that FIRST provides. They provide a how-to on at least one of the missions. And you don't need to do all the missions. You just really need to do the missions you decide to do them well. So an area where we always failed was trying to accomplish too much and push too late into the season. And so last year was probably the best we ever did with practicing more often on the game, but not enough. Teams that practice the missions, that have their missions built, robot built, missions built, and practice running the missions and timing themselves, excuse me, will be better prepared at the tournament. Because there's an awful lot of stress involved with, okay, this one counts. This is for the score. So even if you're doing it during a virtual tournament, there's still that stress level there. So if you guys have practiced as a team and count each practices for all the marbles and time yourselves, you can also realize where you're spending too much time in base, how long each mission takes, and you get to learn a rhythm. Because when the robot comes back to base, there's things that, you know, the two technicians at the board will have to do. So, such as pulling one attachment off, putting the next attachment on, taking mission elements and moving them around. So if they can write a script for how all that works, it becomes more like a ballet. So as the robot comes, everybody knows who grabs what and who does what. And I don't force all my team members to be robot drivers. Some of them don't like the pressure of being up at the board. They enjoyed everything else. That's fine. Some teams do. It's really your choice on how you want to do that. Some teams have the same drivers throughout the entire time, and they're the only ones practiced. I would recommend at least having everybody during home practice the robot missions. Everybody knows how the process works, because you never know when one team member will be sick. So it's like, if that's your mission and you're supposed to be the team member that runs it and you're sick that day and can't make it to the competition, now what does the rest of the team do? So really have everybody share practicing being the drivers, learning how the ballet works, plus giving their input on how to change the ballet of the mission. So, you know, 1, 2, 3, go, robot goes out. As the robot's going out, the two technicians at the board should be preparing for that robot to come back. And hopefully that robot does everything it was supposed to do as it goes out. When the robot comes back, one person will grab the robot as it crosses the line, and the other person can start taking pieces off or putting pieces in place. And so really that's a key element. Just like in auto racing, pit stops, and a lot of times the race is lost or won in the pits. So, and I have seen teams, one year I saw a team spent the entire 2.5 minutes in their pit. Never did the robot go anywhere. They were busy trying to get the robot set up. That is a sad day. Hard to cheer up a team when they never got the robot to even run one mission. Luckily, it only happened one round, and they got better the next time around. But let's see. I think that's about it. What else can I share with you guys that would help you?
And I wanted to welcome Natalie too. Natalie, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Natalie.
Natalie, as an experienced coach, do you have anything that you want to add as far as pearls of wisdom, or maybe things that Kevin said that you know, it resonated with you, or things that it brought up for you in your mind?
So I definitely, while I have the experience, I tend to get new kids every year because I have a homeschool program I work with. So a lot of what I have to remember is that just because I know a lot about it, most of my kids are starting out at scratch all the time, and I really let them learn, you know. I see a lot of teams where a parent or a coach does a lot more pushing, and you can definitely, just like Kevin said, you let them kind of figure out which ones do they want to do. You let them try it, and sometimes through trial and error they learn what they can do and what they can't do. But sometimes they have to have those failures to kind of feel that. And I think that's really important, is you will not get everything done. Don't even try it. Pick the ones you want, let the kids do some programming, and they will figure out very quickly if they can do it or if they're like, we need to move on and do a different program. So no, I think this sounds great. And we haven't done any programming yet, just because we've been getting all of our structures put together. And this next week after Thanksgiving, we will actually put because we have 4 robots that we've acquired over the years. So I just let all my groups each take a robot and learn how to even just build the robot. What is the robot? What is a motor? What is a sensor? So I find the more I do in the front side, the less I have to do on the back side.
It is I won't necessarily call it an advantage, but I think it is such, to having more than one robot for a team. The reason being is that multiple team members can work on different missions and take a robot with them and work on the attachment for that robot and kind of play around with it. Or what we tend to do is we have our main robot and our development robot, and we will try new ideas and changes in the design of the development robot, test it out, and if it works, then integrate that into both robots. And so actually we have 3 robots, so 2 generally are working robots and 1's a dev robot. And that allows the whole team to be able to kind of pick a section of the board and work on missions over there with their copy of the robot and their missions and their attachments. And it works great, just depending on how many team members you have. You don't always have that luxury. And sometimes that luxury takes away from other things. So when we do it at the school, I have 1 board. I actually have 3 boards at the school, but I only set up 1 Lego League board. The reason being is that is an amazing opportunity to get teams to learn how to share, because they all have the same goal. They're all working hard to try to get to competition, and they've got to wait for 7 other teams. So you guys have to work out a way to share this board for your practice time. It's also how I encourage them to get their own kit and take a board home and practice more often than just one day at school. Works. It works. It does relate to the number of hours you can put into it. You do get back out of it. If you're unable to practice too many times a week, don't set your expectations too high. But there's nothing wrong with that. It's every mission they succeed in is a win. They've learned how to program. They've learned how to build. They've learned how to overcome. As Natalie stated, you know, we sometimes, the experienced ones, we forget how much it is to a new kid to make these things happen. I mean, especially a brand new kid, they may never have seen a Lego Technique piece before. They're just used to using Lego system parts, where it's just bricks. And the idea of Lego components that pin together is completely foreign to them, much less motors on a Lego. So it can be quite shocking for some of these kids. And then to think that we're going to make this robot autonomously accomplish these missions, hey, that's more than they make the kids do in first tech challenge and first robotics competition. First Lego League is tough. I like it. Of course, the robots get a lot bigger, heavier, and more expensive in the other groups. So it's another reason why I like First Lego League. But the progression of the programs work in the way they do for a reason. Although I still don't see why they couldn't be more autonomous in the other programs, because I am a huge fan of autonomous, because it takes a lot to program a robot to go out and accomplish those missions where it has to do all the seeing, thinking, and driving. Once you hit go, you don't have a remote control. I think it's awesome. And it's amazing what I see kids able to do every year. they can really think outside the box if you let them do that. So count every small, celebrate every small win, every first time they get that robot to accomplish that mission that they spent weeks struggling with, you know, hey, it works. That's an amazing time to celebrate, and do celebrate over and over and over again. And we'll celebrate again at the competitions. But that's really the winning strategies is, you know, have fun with what you build. Set the expectations just a little bit higher than maybe what they think. Because if you set your expectations even, it may be a little too easy to meet those. So aim just a little bit higher. Push their boundaries, because they may initially think, well, we could never do that. This whole program is to teach them they can do far more than they think they can do if they try and if they work together as a group. And they can, and they will. And so will you. Seen it over and over. Done it myself. Look back and go, how do we do that? But it's awesome. Questions?
Kevin, I just wanted to add on to what you said about the autonomous being such a nice key element of First Lego League Challenge, because in my conversations with sponsors recently, and we're talking engineering company sponsors, right? You know, they remark that that autonomous is so important to them because that's what they see in real life, right? When those kids are going to go out on the job and have different STEM related fields, that's what they're going to be doing is autonomous stuff. They're not going to be sitting there with an Xbox controller, you know, doing their job. So it's really awesome that we are giving even our fourth graders experience that will help them in life later. So coaches, did you have questions for Kevin about this year's robot game strategy or board, or anything else in his presentation that you want to bring up?
I have few, so I wrote them down. I can start if anybody doesn't have. Okay, so Kevin, you just narrated our story. You know, my kids just started with just the brick, just did the basic programs of sound and everything, and they did some missions without the sensor because that was just like trying to do something. And right. They did the project innovation and step counter without color sensor, and then they learned color sensor, line following, the basic line follower, and they are thrilled. So we are trying to do all those 3 missions which they did without line following with the line following now. But it's a basic line follower, so obviously it's a little slow. They experimented, if I go fast, I cannot turn and I just go somewhere else. So they're doing that, but as I'm trying to see research about the next line follower stage, I see it suggests many places to use the reflection light mode rather than the color mode, which uses the value of black and white already.
Right.
So is there an advantage? I was not able to figure out. They're asking me why should we switch to reflection light mode, and I'm like, okay, I don't know. We'll figure it out why it is advantageous to move it to the next stage.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit, but you're gonna have to find a way to phrase it in a question to them so they can learn. The color sensor has, as you know, 2 modes:
right.
Color mode and reflective light.
Right.
Color mode is really just pre-programmed values that Lego determine. Here's what our Lego black, our Lego blue, Lego green looks like. So it is specifically programmed to their version of those colors. Reflective light, in fact, you need to use reflective light and develop a calibration program for your light sensors, because every room you go into, lighting is different. So even with the Lego color finders, color mode, it may not find blue as well in a dark room as it would in a more evenly lit room. If you calibrate the light sensors, which there are instructions on the web, great tutorials on EV3 lessons on how to set up calibrating the light sensor. What that does is adjust the absolute zeros and 100 for what is 0 black, son? Yeah, 0 is black and 100 would be the whitest portion of the board. So what you do is you put the robot on the darkest section of the board, one of the black lines, and you would hit a button on the robot, and that tells the robot to record this as 0. And the brightest part of the board, record that as 100. So now, when a robot follows the line, it's not actually following the black line, it's following the edge of the line. So it's actually following half white, half black. So what would the mathematical value of what the robot's looking for in numbers? If black is 0 and white is 100, they're looking for 50%. That is the reflective light value they would want to find, or something within that range, because then that's the edge of the line.
Okay, yeah. I think we'll research more on, I think maybe that will be our next year's goal, to go to an advanced line follower. This year we'll just maybe try with the basic line follower.
Whatever they use, they have to be able to explain to the judges. So yes, there are different complexities in line followers. There's proportional line following.
Right.
And you have to be able to explain to the judges what that is as a team.
Right.
I've seen young teams do it. I saw one young kid who I thought, there's no way. The parents and coaches must have taught him how to do it. Watched more videos about this kid, and I realized, no, this kid is just that bright. He knew the mathematics behind it, and he can quote it. And we got some training videos from this kid on our website as well. So, you know, some kids just are that much more mathematical and can do these things, but not everybody can.
Sure.
I want to add to that, Kevin. We had a student come through, I want to say 3 years ago, because this is my 11th year doing Lego robotics. Now, I haven't coached all 11 years. I tag off to other parents and teachers. I'm like, you do, you do, you do. But about 3 years ago, we had a student who really struggled in school. Very, very autistic, but Asperger's. This kid walked in and he ran that Lego table. Like the things he could come up with and the way he understood that robot, I mean, we couldn't even explain it. Like it just made sense to him, and he had it, and he went with it. And so he taught a lot of kids things that even in the, let's see, at that point, 7, 8 years I'd been there, I couldn't even come up with what he was doing. So it was pretty cool because I learned a lot from him.
Yeah, that's nice to do. Just having said that, then is it okay if kids use some combination of line follower and some not, like in mission?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the world's your oyster. It's however the team comes up with how to make things happen.
Yeah.
Line follow. Let's see. Last year, actually, we were having difficulties with our line following, and we were doing proportional line following. The team tried just about everything, new light sensors, and we were worried about maybe it was a problem with the motors, so we bought actually brand new motors that kind of seemed to help. I don't think we ever fully discovered. Now our EV3s are getting a little old. You know, they're about 5, 6 years old now. But we bought them the year EV3 came out, and they have gone around the mill for the entire school for all those years, 18s a year. So they've had their use in them. And so we don't know exactly. We never did figure it out. It frustrated the heck out of an experienced team. So maybe it definitely kept them humble. And they actually had to work around the fact they couldn't get reliable line following working. And they knew all the rules. They've watched all the videos. And so their problem was, we can't get line following working. And they had 3 robots to try it on. All 3 robots had problems. We don't know what the problem was in the end. It might have been firmware, but we tried even going back to older firmware. In the end, sometimes it turns out to be one silly little design thing that nobody noticed, and you realize after taking the robots apart the following year, it's like, this is why nothing worked. But so far we haven't seen anything like that. I'll tell you later. But the team had to then come up with a innovative way to work on a board where they know if you just drive blindly, you don't get very accurate. So they used more of the walls, and they would bounce off more of the mission models to know exactly where they were. And so they had to make adjustments to what they did. Some of the missions they did were blindly driven, only because the line follower wasn't working. So all in all, it was a good year. They learned to make adjustments, and that's really what your teams will be doing too. And for me, every year, every team, and I've had some teams that were pretty darn frustrating. You know, it's a cake, and you get a different batter in the mix if, like Natalie and I, where each year your teams are a new mixture of kids. And sometimes that mixture doesn't mix well together. But for my personal teams, I've been a little lucky because my son was on the teams most of the years, and that team was kind of set apart. But as the club director, really, they ran themselves while I was off running around. So they got the least coaching from me. But there were other teams where the way we did it in our school was kids will generally gravitate towards all their friends, want to be on a team with their friends. And then you always have that mixture of kids that didn't know anybody, and they're the odd group out, and they end up becoming a team together. Sometimes that's where the worst mixtures happen, or the best, because they are kind of forced to work together when they didn't know each other in the beginning. And sometimes they're not mature enough. So you have some fourth graders that really should be on a first Lego League junior team. So the year before the pandemic hit, we had started a program where, teams can, if they don't want to be competitive, they just want to play with Lego, they can join a first Lego League junior group using Lego League components, but not have to worry about competition and just build. Because that's part of the problem is if you have a lot of teams and you have certain number of kids, I just want to build and program. I don't care about competing. And if you put them on the same team with the ones that do want to compete, you have an inner battle with people over their ultimate desires. So if you can create a team where they all want to compete, that's great. If you can create a team where none of them want to compete, that's great too. You have to mix the two together. That's a lot harder to do.
And we actually did that, Kevin. We had enough kids come in one year, and generally we have two teams. That's just kind of how it works with our school. But we had a group of kids come in that we had on our experienced team. They had done Lego League for probably 2-3 years together, kind of a mixture, but they were really strong. And then we had this new group of youngers coming in that for us, we said, hey, would you guys like to have these two separate teams? And we literally had like a novice team where they weren't overwhelmed with what these older kids knew. So they knew they weren't going to compete at any level to this other team. And they didn't care. They were so happy to get to learn that robot and have that time and not be overwhelmed by those older, more, skilled kiddos. And it was actually pretty awesome because our younger team did really well and won more awards than our older team because of their spirit and their ingeniousness. So it was, and I don't know if ingeniousness is a word, but.
That is true. That a perfect team would be as if you could take some fourth graders and some 7th and 8th graders and merge them together. Problem is it doesn't really work all that well because the age difference is too much, but the young ones, the 4th graders and 5th graders still think they can do anything. They can build a Lego robot dinosaur that will solve all the problems of the world. You get to 6th, 7th, and 8th, especially 7th and 8th, they're like, that'll never work. That's crazy. I got homework. And so it's hard to get that enthusiasm in the older kids. They have the skill. They've been through it. But they don't have that enthusiasm. And they already have all of that stuff that school and life teaches upon you that it shouldn't really, of negativity, and these are the rules. And, it's when they were fourth graders thinking outside the box that the rules were not broken, but made anew because there weren't rules. They're like, we did make a dinosaur that could solve all the problems. So, yeah, it's merge the experience of the older kids with the enthusiasm of the younger kids, and you have a power team. So keep them enthused no matter what age, I guess, would be the ultimate goal. And so that's how I kept my son's team enthused last year was, my son had been doing it for 8 years. He started in third grade, took a year off to mentor, and then last year he did it again. And it being his last year, he wanted to make more excitement. So he convinced the team, which actually wasn't too tough, to push the boundaries and do passive only missions. But I will say, arguments came later in the season when time is running short and the younger ones are like, let's just give up and use motors. And, he's like, well, we'll discuss it as a group. Does everybody want to give up on what we've been doing? We've got all these missions over here that work passively. Do we want to break our rule and add a motor for this one mission? Or do we want to keep pushing through? And they pushed through.
All right, friends, do we have more questions or more things to add to the mix here? Any more voices that want to join into the conversation?
Only his voice from afar, but not, come on over. Yeah, I was hoping it would make my son less shy, but it hasn't.
Becca, go ahead.
I do have a quick question. So I have a Spike. Is it Spike?
Spike
Prime?
Yeah. And the distance sensor isn't working all that well.
Okay.
And I was wondering, is it possible to just buy that one part? Because I'm not really, and I don't know if we need it yet. The kids haven't gotten to that part yet. They're doing a lot of the color sensor right now. So I don't even know if they're going to need it. But I was looking because it does seem there's a big gap with it. And it was working nicely a month or two ago. And I think maybe the kids were a little too handsy with it.
Okay.
And so if I need to purchase one, where would I get that?
Well, you can definitely contact Lego Education and let them know, or Lego themselves. There's also some websites that sell Lego components. And now I just went with bricklink.com. You can buy all kinds of Lego parts and pieces there. And actually, I just recently watched a comparison video between the Spike Prime kit and the newly released Lego Mindstorms Robotic Inventor Kit or something. Essentially, it's Spike Prime for retail kit. Comes in a box. There's actually, I don't know the pricing, but you will get different components in the Lego Mindstorms Spike Prime thing versus Spike Prime itself. Spike Prime was designed for education and has pieces and parts in it that fit better within the classroom environment. The Robot Inventor Kit has more pieces initially in the box to build more complex robots. The Spike Prime kit itself came designed more for fitting within the classroom and classroom timelines. But if you buy the full kit through Lego Education or through First, you can buy the kit and the expansion kit. And then those two amount to a whole lot of components.
Yeah,
But
that's what we have.
okay. I haven't used it yet. I'm kind of jealous. My son is not. He
Yeah,
loves
and
it.
I'm good to use it, right? Because I talked to last year's team, the coach, and he actually suggested, he's like, well, if you can use it. I was like, I better, it's in the book, because we had already purchased it. My company purchased it, so.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Becca, are you done? Maybe you can ask more.
Oh, no, I'm good. That was my, no, there were really good things to this presentation on, because we're at the point where like, okay, what do we want to do with the program? Where do we want to go first? And like that spreadsheet's a really good idea. Our biggest issue is we have one robot and we have 6 kids. So there's always kids that then once one kid starts getting distracted with something else, that drives another kid to get distracted, and then kind of it starts falling apart, the focus on. So I'm a little jealous having another robot, but.
The way I handle that is I divvy up the team into 3 groups. So 2 work on learning and developing programming, 2 working on building robot attachments for the robot if the robot itself isn't done, and 2 working on the project. And depending on how long your meetings are, you can go half an hour, whatever, and then swap who does what. That way, everybody gets a chance, and maybe not as much gets accomplished, but everybody gets to accomplish something and gets, to spend some time in each area. So it's the fairest way to do it. I also tend to, actually, I don't normally break out the robot in the beginning of the season. It's hands off. I make them start on the project, because once you break out the robot kit, forget it. They're going to have a hard time concentrating on the project at all. So, I've gone, almost half the season before I've opened up a robot kit before. Of course, truth is that's just because I didn't have them all sorted yet.
Yeah, it took us a while to get it, because we had the old EV3s at the school my kids go to, and we just could not get it working. And supposedly last year's team had the new set, but the school couldn't find it. Was a mess. So it actually took us a while. So actually we had a lot of our project. We know what our innovation is. That's pretty good. And we're actually kind of designing it and having fun with it. And we're a little backwards where we've made this innovation. Now we're actually doing the research to back it up. But you know what? They're having fun. So
that is most important.
I want to say, I will take any of your EV3 leftovers. I call our group the EV3 graveyard. That's the only reason I have that many robots, is as teams have gone out, I'm like, we'll take good care of it, and then we can use extra parts. So EV3 graveyard down here in Durango, Colorado.
I'll let them know.
Hey, I have an NXT graveyard that I use for doing sumo bots. So I don't mind those bumping into each other and stuff. We have this big round sumo board, and so kids can get together and build out a robot and try to program them to push the other robots out of the ring. Nice and fun.
Be careful, Kevin. When you say NXT, that's dating us. No talking NXT. We're old timers.
Had somebody wanted to donate us some RCX, and we couldn't think of what we'd do with them. So we said, no, thanks.
Yep. We had NXTs too, Natalie. So I'm with you. I'll age myself, not just with my gray hair.
My question, one of the questions was our kids were asking, are they allowed to put the attachment before the 2.5 minute timer, or do they have to like set up their robot after the timer starts?
Well, sadly, in first efforts to make the rules with less words so that it'd be easier to understand, some of this stuff has been made harder to understand or to find in the rules. At the beginning of the match, they can set up their robot to run whatever mission they want to do. So if they have an attachment that goes on that robot, fine and dandy. The way things will start initially, though, is the robot and all your attachments will have to fit in either the small inspection area or the big inspection area. And it does have a ceiling to that. I think it's 1 foot high, invisible cube there that it has to fit within. After that, you can set up for the mission and put whatever attachments you want on the robot and be ready to go.
Okay, so you can do that before the
match starts. Yes.
Okay, so if they're carrying any cubes to put into the basketball or anything, you can just put it right that time, and then it can be, because if you put it later, or the robot, you know, if you use hands, that's kind of not, like, it deducts the points or something, right?
They can touch the robot and any mission elements inside the base area freely without losing any points.
Okay.
If they reach out with their hands outside of the home base area,
Okay.
it's a no-no, and they would get a penalty for that.
Okay, sure.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then my question was, and I think Catherine we talked about, is I saw the EV3 guided mission for EV3 classroom. Have any of you seen the Boccia mission for EV3 lab, like the guided mission?
I have not.
Okay. Because then, as you said, every year they give one guided mission. So this year they did give the guided mission, but not for EV3 lab then. They just give it for EV3 classroom, which is a new window, which is a new app for Windows.
Right.
Right.
Did we have this question in our last session, Anupama? And did we not get an answer from First on that? I thought that they got back to us on it, but did it not answer the question?
I think I have not, so I don't know.
It's available through the EV3 Classroom Edition you download through the Windows Store, is my understanding. That one has the mission with all the tutorials. Well, hi, guys.
And Anupama, I'll look back on my emails and see exactly what First said as well, and then forward that to you. So between what Kevin said and that, hopefully you'll get it.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. All right.
So, Natalie, after doing this so many years, I assume you've, become addicted like I have. The thrills and the pain of First keep you doing it. You can say no, but
it's a love for the students. I genuinely love my students. When I first went into Lego League, I had no idea what I was getting into.
Neither
and
did
it was a tough learning curve because I am not robotically or Lego inclined. It's just something I was never interested in, but my students were, and I was like, okay, let's do it. And like I said, we have had a team ever since, and I want to go clear back to like 2010, 11, maybe 11 is when we first started. So like, I don't know a life without Lego League. Like, it's just part of our school now, and I try to pawn it off on parents and other teachers, but I genuinely do love it. And I like the excitement though. It's the kids' excitement, like you said, of going from building just these little things that are stable and just, wow, I can build a ship, to all of a sudden I can build something that moves and it works. Like that's cool.
Yep. I can say for me, it's been one of the best educations for me every year. I learn something new, something different that these kids teach me. So, there's always been talk about how Dean Kamen has mentioned that the robot is like the carrot on the end of the stick to get kids to learn math, science, engineering, and technology. Well, these kids wanting to learn is the carrot on the end of the stick for parents, coaches, and teachers to go through with this program and to help these kids learn. And in the end, we also benefit in the process. At least that's the way I feel. That's why I'm still doing it. Not quite as long as Natalie has, but Natalie, you want to take over and run the whole program? No?
All right, well, I think that's a fabulous way to bring our evening to a close. If anybody had any other lingering questions, Kevin's email is always ever present and available to you as partner, and so you can always reach out to him and ask more questions. It's just Popp with 2 P's at coloradofirst.org. Okay. We just thank everybody for coming tonight, and thank you for your rookie words of wisdom and your veteran words of wisdom and everybody's great questions that helps us all learn together, right? Kevin, do you have anything you want to say as we're wrapping up here?
No, other than just have a good season, be safe, have a good time.
Okay, awesome.